All life on Earth can be traced back on its evolutionary existence through a common ancestor. Tree of life concept proposed by Charles Darwin in his On the Origin of Species demonstrates how all of the species originated from one or two species. Darwin imagined that organisms' evolution could be represented by a branching tree, with and more recently evolved organisms at outer branches, while the ancestral ones at the base. It was during the time of Ernst Haeckel that the term tree of life was used as seen in the geological tree of humanity. As you can see on the figure, it represented the diversity of life forms on Earth in his time. It is important to note also, however, that some limitations such as the pace or tempo of evolution cannot be reflected from the length of the branches in the evolutionary tree. The evolutionary tree of life became the basis for classifying organisms. In this regard, the relationships established by the Philogenetic Systematics could describe an organism's evolutionary history or its phylogeny. Based on this concept, another classification scheme emerged to support the biological species concept in the 1940s. The phylogenetic species system of classification believed that classifying organisms should not only rely on physical similarities and differences, but also on ancestry and descent. This evolutionary relationship should be able to trace the possible origin of the organisms and the development into their present forms. Today, taxonomy reaches beyond naming and classifying organisms to clarify new methods and theories, which can explain the mechanism of evolution. Phylogenetic systematics is the field of biology that deals with identifying the evolutionary relationships among many different kinds of life on Earth, both the living, which is also known as the extant one, and the dead, which are the extinct one. The underlying principle behind the evolutionary theory states that similarities among organisms are due to common descent or inheritance from a common ancestor. Molecular phylogenetics is a branch of biology that studies the relationships of organisms based on their DNA and protein compositions using computer algorithms. Biologists map out the relationships of organisms through construction of phylogenetic tree. It is a very useful tool for tracing back the pathway by which species are related to each other or have diverged over time. A common ancestor is usually found at the base of all the branches of the tree, which is known as the root, meaning this is the source which all species are derived from. Here is a simple phylogenetic representation of the five kingdom system shows that the monerans are the most primitive group of living organisms giving rise to the protist. The three kingdoms with multicellular and eukaryotic members originate from three separate lines from the protista. In the six kingdom system, a common ancestor to the three domains of life gave rise to the present forms of the prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms. Today, almost 2 million species have been classified and many remains to be discovered. The enormous task to reconstructing a comprehensive tree of life based on morphological, evolutionary, and molecular characteristics to create an accurate picture of the relationship of all life forms on Earth requires the skills and cooperation of many taxonomies in the world. Advances in genetics have expanded the understanding of classification and enriched Darwin's original ideas of evolutionary relationships.